Okay, so while we're waiting for Ravi to join in as well from the list of attendees we have today, um, I think he's here as well. So I think we're practically ready to start. Hi, Ravi.
Hi, good evening, Sutaj. Am I visible and audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, great.
So let's kickstart the event. We have today two panel members. We had spoken about three panel members, and Ella will unfortunately not be able to join us because of a last minute emergency. We Let me first tell you a bit about the flow of the event today, and from this point we can then take it forward. So the first 5 minutes, I will be talking a bit about my own experience to join ISB and my current experience at ISB so far. Post which the next 10 minutes we will open the floor to the alums here, Ravi and Saurabh, to describe their experiences and their time and experience with ISB and post ISB. Post which we will have a roundtable discussion moderated by me regarding questions across different buckets related to admissions, related to profile and strategy as the topic for today's, and overall ISB related. And finally, we will have some closing remarks by all of us present today. So let me talk a little bit about myself. I'm Shautat Singh. I'm currently a PGP class of 2022 student at the Indian School of Business in Hyderabad. I I got through ISB in interestingly in 2016 through the Young Leaders Program model, which from where the undergrad where I was coming from was really popular at the time, and used to have at that point an intake of somewhere around 150 to 200 students every year. Um, Post which 2016 I did a in 2017 I graduated from Sukhdev College of Business Studies in Delhi University. Post which I worked with Boston Consulting Group for a little less than 3 years in their knowledge and consulting divisions. I had a vast experience in that space across multiple industries, and but eventually drilled down and focused a lot towards the space of retail and automotive. That was an interesting set of experiences and was always shaping me up towards ISB. When I was in college, my intent to join ISB, and I was very focused to say in 2015 itself that I wanted to be a part of this setup, was that I had a clear idea of what an international experience I was looking for in terms of education, and also had a clear agenda of being in the Indian ecosystem. So, keeping those two things in mind, I for me ISB stood out in a very clear sense, and I got through in my first cycle of attempts as well in YLP in 2016. Only had applied in the first cycle and got through in 2016 itself. So post that, like I mentioned, when I worked with Boston Consulting Group, it was an experience that opened up a lot of possibilities in the space of business and strategy, which has kept me going. I would say last year, post working with Boston Consulting Group, I was working with the Urban Company, which is a service provider for home and home services, and there I was working as a senior manager in a specific space of strategy and operations, and that was all of it has been a stepping stone for me to be able to join the class of 2022, and be able to add more and more technical knowledge to an extent from the PGP itself, and on top of that open a lot of possibilities that ISB does open up. Interestingly, here I have taken up the role of the president of the consulting club as well this year, which is one of the reasons I'm moderating this session today. And I think it makes sense for me to have a great conversation with the panelists today, Ravi and Saurabh, about what possibilities exist in the field of strategy and leadership, which I think is a stepping stone from where I currently am. So that's a little bit about me, more than a little bit actually. Why don't we open it up? Saurabh, can you please go ahead and tell us a little bit about your journey so far?
Thanks, Shotaj, and pleasure to be here. I am a 2010 pass out from the PGP program. Had 6 years of experience prior to that. Have 11 years of experience post that, so 17 years in the industry now. I have worked with multiple companies, obviously in different streams. The last close to 7.5 years have been with Mahindra Group as part of their group strategy and the customer experience team.
Thanks, Saurabh. Ravi, would you want to talk a little bit about your own journey so far?
Yes. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me, Shotad and Jimmy and the entire ISB team. And Saurabh, it's a pleasure to meet you. I think this is the first time we are interacting as well. And good evening to all the people who I see are joining even now. So quick introduction, Ravi Chandrasekhar. I am an engineer by undergraduate degree. And after my undergraduate, I worked in ITC in manufacturing for 2.5 years or so. And my career trajectory began there. I know that's a question that will come up later, right? So I began my career in core manufacturing. After about 2.5 years, I joined ISB in 2012 and passed out in 2013 with a specialization in strategy and finance. After that, I joined Deloitte US India offices in their consulting practice. And I was working there for about 5.5 years. After which I decided, let's do something in the industry away from consulting a little bit. So I joined this company called Rivigo, which is a logistics startup for a very brief period. But after that, I landed in Flipkart about a couple of years ago. I joined in their corporate strategy team when I first joined, but then moved to the technology part of the org. And currently, I'm a director of product strategy here at Flipkart. And I can get into the details of what that is, what the role means, etc. But that's a quick overview of my journey so far.
Great. So I think with that said, I think the moment is ripe for us to move into questions that we've already set up. So the way we want to streamline this session is in two ways. We'll have the live audience also sending in some questions, which I will try my level best to cover as and when I see them. And on top of that, we already have a set of collated questions with us, as mentioned, across 4 buckets, which I will move across and will open it up to either Ravi or Saurabh, depending on whoever wants to answer that, or if I feel that specifically would want to hear what one of you would have to add in that particular question. So let's start with something lighter in the sense of how something related to ISB. So since it's been some time for you, it'll be a jog down your memory lane, just to have a sense on what was your usual day at ISB and what apart from academics constituted life on campus for you both. So either of you can go first, and would want to hear from both of you.
Ravi, you want to go first? Yours is more recent, so less jogging the memory.
No, Saurabh, I insist. I want to hear from the more experienced person first. So why don't you go ahead? I'll follow you here.
Sure. So, Shotaj, I think that 1 year was the best year in a way when I look back from memory perspective that I had. It was a lot of learning, a lot of friendships, a lot of fun. I think one word, if I have to use that to describe that 1 year, was unbalanced. We talk so much about balancing work, life, things in our life. And suddenly this year at ISB, you have so many things on your plate that it becomes a juggling every day. It's completely unbalanced. So you're sleeping at crazy hours with almost nil amount of sleep. You don't want to miss anything in that 1 year. Your learning is exponential, and maybe during the course of the discussion we'll come to that as well. But uh, you have so much of knowledge, not just coming in the classroom, but coming from the peer set that you interact with, you don't want to miss. And most of them are best at what they have done before they join ISB, and hence bring so much on the table. You don't, you love to interact, you love to learn, but then there are too many of them. So you are spending a lot of time interacting with them either in the classroom, outside the classroom, or in the parties. And I think that's where you learn the most, in the parties, informal settings with them. But I had, as I said, fantastic experience, a lot of memories. Last year, just pre-COVID, we had our 10th reunion, and it was literally a trip down the memory lane in a way. Meeting all, and we had a batch of 600 at that time. Now the batches are much bigger. But even though 600, just remembering the name and going crazy over all the things that we have done and managed to cram in that 1 year was amazing.
Yeah, no, I couldn't have put it any better myself. I think so. The one thing about ISP that I feel very strongly is it is a small world, right? That 1 year ISB is sort of your entire universe, right? You will find few reasons to step out of campus. And I think that's that entire 1 year. You're in that small universe with about 500, 600 other people. And all the stuff you do around working, studying, assignments, all the parties, everything. I think all of that happens within that group. So I think a typical day, which I think was part of the question that Shota was asking, would basically begin in the morning, classes, and classes and assignments. So we had a morning and an afternoon class, so we do that. After that, we would typically huddle for, there'd be working on something that is due for the next day. We'd go to the library and do a ton of work. In the evening, one of the more interesting things that happened in ISB, right? Again, in the theme of this being a small universe, there were many sort of interest groups. There was a group doing music. There was a group doing fitness. There was a group doing, studying on global affairs. So there was always different groups that did different things. And that would basically be your evening. The night would be, more often than not, especially in the first part of the year, would be parties and social gatherings and whatnot. And typically, after you did a party, you would also have to spend some time working on your assignment, which again was due the next day, right? I don't know how much that's changed, but that was life then. And we used to work very, very hard, and we used to play hard as well. And that's what made the year so fun.
I'm very, very tempted to add on to everything you guys have said. Even though I've just, of course, at this point, we are 4 months into this year's course. And I mean, every single thing, it's just seems the same, in the sense that those experiences, we have a culture night to night after this. And there's going to be a situation where obviously we have assignments to do. So we're going to be working post that at night. And even taking out time for such a session at this point, with the way the courses, of course, requires you to have to juggle and work with everything happening around you. On top of that, I think the thing that really resonates and people call it as a part of the experience is when your sleep hours become a bit erratic here and there, and you're trying to find time to sleep, especially because you know that communicating with people is going to be your best form of learning over and above the classroom teaching as well. So yeah, I think whoever who is attending the session should know that pre-COVID, post-COVID, things have been very, very similar and continue to be that way at ISB today as well. So let me just move a little bit towards a question related to profiles. This is, I would, again, the question is regarding how can someone from a non-engineering or social development or technical public sector, multiple set of profiles that we have in CAs, people from IT, how can they eventually get a chance to enter strategy and leadership roles? I think that is something that people come in with varied experience at ISB and just want to get a sense of how it would be for them post. So, Saurabh, why don't you go ahead?
So I think the bridge, Shotaj, is ISB, right? When you say people from diverse experience join in, and that is, there's a lot of focus on the diversity as well. But once you are at ISB, the kind of tools, interactions, subjects you're going through sort of prep you up and prepare you for the life of consulting or strategy post ISB. Now, how you build it up in terms of your profile when you are at ISB and even pre-ISB when you're working, and if you have a clear idea and agenda, that helps. But also once you are over there, how you are building up your analytical skills or your problem solving skills, your case studies, I think eventually prep you up and make you ready for all the strategy related interviews that come up. What you can do is, and maybe we, in the course of the discussion, will dig further into the whole topic of preparing when you are you're studying, you're part of the course and you're looking at strategy, or even once you're out, because I joined the strategy field 7 years back, and it wasn't from ISB, right? So I joined equity markets post ISB and then transitioned into strategy. But even during that transition, all the learnings and the skill sets that you build up during your ISB days sort of comes together with your experience that you have gained or the sector knowledge that you have built up to set you ready for a role in strategy.
Anything you want to add, Ravi?
Yeah, no, I think that makes perfect sense, right? See, I think a lot of people typically have this question. I had this question, like I was talking about, how does my past experience sort of help me get to where I want in the future, right? And as Saurabh so beautifully pointed out, ISB is that melting pot, right? Where you have the ability to learn and sort of take a new direction, right? Now, in terms of skills, and it's interesting to talk about what does it really take, a strategy or a consulting role, right? Let's talk about that to begin with. So if you think about the key skills that if I were to test somebody for, I would talk about being able to understand what is typically an ambiguous problem, right? I want to win market share, or I want to make my bottom line better. Breaking it down into components in a logical structure and figuring out specific actions that allow you to win, right? That's basically the essence of it. And those are skills that people can develop in any field, right? And what ISB allows you to do is make that transition. And for people who come from, say, a core manufacturing background, as I did, right? ISB gives you these platforms, such as the consulting club, for example, right? Or projects with professors, for example, or ELPs. If they are still there, right? You can do these small projects with different companies that come to ISB at some point of time, and essentially through the year, right? Create a portfolio of work or create a portfolio of interest that basically can reflect in your resume at the end of the year as, hey, this is an area I'm interested in, and these are the things I have done over the year, right? To be able to qualify for this discussion in this role. I think that is another opportunity that ISB provides, right? So one thing that people who are completely not from strategy or consulting and want to get into this area can do in ISB, which is very discreet, which shows up on your resume and helps you get screened, is stuff like this, right? Through social groups, through peer groups, through alum groups, try and understand and create a portfolio of interest which can reflect in your resume and help you get shortlisted and have that discussion.
Makes perfect sense. I think you also answered a follow-up question here. So I think, Ravi, I'll just also double that question as well and see if you have anything to add to that, to this particular question, which was regarding folks coming from diverse backgrounds for looking to enter consulting firms post MBA. And are there any additional skills required there? I think you answered to quite an extent regarding how people can shape their experience and how they can portray. But do you think there are any set of additional skills that people can look to hone?
Yeah. See, I'll give a thought here, right? I think it's great having areas of interest and, wanting a career in strategy or consulting, as many people do coming in, is I think a fantastic way. It gives you direction and gives you the ability to go, find these groups that you can work with. The one thing I would encourage everyone in this group to think about, right, is ISB is about possibilities, right? You're going to have these 500, 600 people who are coming from completely different areas who have done very, very different work, right? The companies that are going to come at the end of the year, especially in the current context of the Indian market, the technology market, you do not know what's coming 1 or 2 years down the line, and most of you will sit for placements, right? So I would suggest, before you make up your mind on strategy right at the beginning, you should explore the opportunities that ISB has to offer, right? Maybe it's strategy, sure. Maybe it's a product role. Maybe it's a finance role. The beautiful thing is, I think ISB allows you to explore these opportunities. That said, for a specific strategy type role, I think, like I mentioned, right? I think what you would want to do is basically show the work, even if it is through projects, through papers, white papers, whatever it is that you choose to work on. There are specific things that you do. For example, one of the projects I worked on, I went up to a prof and worked with him to create sort of a white paper, right? Which was a strategic white paper on the airline industry. So there are things like that you can do, which ultimately you can show up and sort of sell your resume better for the particular kind of role that you explore. That's my perspective.
Got it. So I will move to the next question in a different field. I think it was strategy related, and here I would want Saurabh to respond first. The question is regarding, what does a professional day in the life of a strategy leader in a company look like? Specifically, even if you have a technology company is also something that people want to know about. And how does it change with career progressions in the same role? Since you have spent a lot of time in your role in your organization, Saurabh, you would be able to also answer that very, very well.
One line very different than the life at ISB. I think Ravi pretty much covered it in one of the answers. So as a strategy guy, what you're trying to do is pick up a lot of information which are around the business, right? You're looking at the competitive landscape. You're looking at changing trends. You're looking at the industry trends. You're looking at competition behavior. You're looking at your own internal challenges, constraints, and then trying to figure out the most perfect scenario that you should be as a company or as a business pursuing. So if I have to sort of make it more tangible, what you are trying to do is picking up the specified problem statement. And that's obviously the first step of any strategy project that you're working on, along with the stakeholders. And once you have defined that, you start working on the scope, you start working and building up the assumptions, hypotheses, doing your customer research, validating those hypotheses and putting it out. So and that is a beauty of strategy profile, if I can put it that way. So today I may be working on a fintech project for one of the group companies. 2 months down the line, I'll be working on a CX journey for a manufacturing company. In my case, it could be Mahindra Autos. Or I may be working with Tech Mahindra on looking at a potential customer acquisition strategy. Or I can be working with Tractors looking at market share increase for a particular market. See, all these projects, eventually you're looking at different kind of markets, different kind of segments. And hence the way you will be looking at getting the answer or building the scenarios or the hypothesis will depend or will be customized to that particular problem statement, that particular industry. And that's where you start doing your in-depth research and start working onto it. What remains the same are the basic principles of problem solving.
I like how direct you are with answers, sort of very to the point and very crisp, especially because sticking to first principles eventually becomes most crucial in such situations. So great. I will take a question related to admissions as well. And I would request you guys to try your level best to answer however much you recall from your time and processes, etc. I know it can be a bit challenging, but do again try and recall your own experiences as well when you applied to ISB's PGP program. So the question is how to build our profile while balancing a full-time rigorous working schedule to create spikes in certain situations where people may also have a weaker link in terms of, say, academic scores and graduation and so on and so forth. The second question of that also is that would a prior experience and strategy in any domain be helpful for shortlists on campus? So two halves of that question. First is, of course, how you managed your application while managing your work schedule. The second is regarding how your experience would help you with, say, shortlists on campus. So Ravi, why don't you take it up?
Sure. I think the first question is interesting, right? What I can promise you is if you think that working full time and creating an application and getting into ISB is rigorous and time consuming, ISB is about 10 times that, right? So at best, at worst, it is practice for you into ISB. That's basically what I would say, right? Speaking about me personally, when I wrote the essays and applied for ISB, I was working in Haridwar in a factory in ITC, right? And I had like 12-hour shifts literally that I had to do. Yes, it was tough to make time, but nowhere near impossible, right? And again, I'm speaking from a personal standpoint. Everyone's circumstances are different. Yeah, so I did make time. I did have to struggle a little bit, make time, and I did. And like I said, it's training into ISB because ISB is about 10 times as crazy as that process, right? In terms of shortlist and a specific type of profile, I think, and I've been part of some of these resume screenings as well, right? What I will say is that ISB, one of the fantastic things that ISB does is it looks for well-rounded resumes, well-rounded profiles, right? So sure, spikes help. Ultimately, it is about showing and basically doing a variety of work around a variety of areas as well. Having like a more complete profile. It's not just one spike or the other, right? So I think that was important. And again, I came from a core manufacturing sort of background, right? So I had done some work outside of this as well in terms of, social service and volunteering. So that sort of brings the whole story together. And I think, of course, the essays, I'm assuming that is still part of the process right now. So I think that also conveys, the other component, which is all the non-resume components of what you're thinking and what your application is. So I think I personally don't think that there are any specific types of profiles that stand to benefit over the others. I would like to believe that it is more well-rounded profiles that ultimately win out. And it's a combination not just of profile or of a specific point on your resume, but a combination of these factors, which is the admission process.
Saurabh, I would want to hear your views on this question as well.
Sure, Shota. And I think Ravi put it brilliantly. Going back to my experience, I still very clearly remember, although it's almost 11, 12 years now, I faced the same issue. I was working with Reliance Retail at that time. And these were the early days of Reliance Retail. We were literally opening 2 stores a day. And that means putting in a lot of efforts, late hours in the office. But look at it this way, and most of the people applying for ISB have certain experience. And that's the basic criteria. And I'm assuming most of the audience can relate to that. When you are working in your professional life and there's a project that needs to be delivered in 4 months, you do that irrespective. You find time for it. So it's important you lay down a time very clearly indicating which is the day when you will finally submit the essay. To do that, how many rounds you need to do it before that, and then start building up the contours of the essay. And when and Ravi touched upon that, and you touched upon that. See, it's about building your profile in a way, one, it's balanced, it's all rounded as Ravi put it. So it obviously includes your academic profile, but that is just one part of it. And I've been part of multiple admission panels over the year. When you're sitting and interacting or even looking at the essays, academics, yes, is important, but what you're also looking at is what this candidate brings on on the table when he becomes part of the batch? I think that is the basic question you're looking at, right? You can call it diversity. You can call it the past experience and the exposure that the candidate had. You may look at the social service sector experience that the person has, or maybe something very, very different the person may have done. Over the years, I have seen, irrespective of the academics, and that's a basic filter, it has to be at a certain threshold. But I have come across such interesting profiles and such beautiful exposures and experiences that the candidates have done. It's not about they telling you, they selling their pitch to you, which eventually the process becomes. But at the end of the day, as a panelist, you start looking at some of the candidates and say, this guy should be there in the batch. You know, if this person would have been in my batch, I would have learned a lot in my interactions with him. So think with that. Don't get bogged down by all these talks about you should have a spike and, you know, you should have 3 spikes or 4 spikes, and there should be something crazy that you must have done in your life, and NGO to chahiye to kahin se aise mile. Don't get into that. Be honest, but look at it from the lens of why someone should look at you and say, okay, this is one very, very interesting profile. And when I sat with this candidate, and that's one beauty. I have seen multiple admission interviews across the colleges during my time. I have been a part of ISB admission on both sides of the table. ISB admission discussions are very unlike the interviews that you'll face. You know, what we are trying to do is not eliminate. What we are trying to do is not say, "Acha, ye 10 mein se 3 to hame select karne." No, that's not the idea. The idea is to identify the best. Now, eventually, obviously, you have a quota, you have a limit to the number of people you can take in a batch, but the complete admission process is more about identifying the right talent rather than eliminating the extra resumes or the profiles you have got. So be honest, build up your profile in a way that if you are the judge of it, you want this candidate to be sitting next to you in the class, and build the story around it. From a time management perspective, be very, very shrewd. Make it a project management piece, be very clear. And as I said, I was there, I faced all these challenges. I just laid down a time period. I said, okay, by say this particular date of this particular month, first of all, you have to be clear whether you're going for round 1 or round 2. If you're going for the round 1, at least know the date. I met candidates who come and discuss, and you ask them which round you want to go, and like, jisme taiyar ho jayenge. Don't do that. So be very clear which round, what is the final date of admission, by which day you want to finish your admission. You don't want to wait for the last day, because there could be technical snags. There could be Wi-Fi router not working, and we see that a lot in our professional communication when Wi-Fi is not working and hence camera is not on. But on a serious note, fix up those timelines, identify by when you will be ready with the first draft, identify 4 or 5 of your closest friends who can go through those essays, who know you well, professionally, personally, can give you ideas and tips. You refine your essays by a particular date and put it out. Break it into chunks. See, all of these pointers that I'm making, you would have done it for some project in your office or something in your life. Just break it into chunks, and suddenly what you see as difficult to manage with your job, with your rigorous job, becomes very, very easy. And as Ravi said, if you're finding this rigorous, you'll be in for a shocker at ISB.
I do want to, and by the way, sort of fantastic, right? That's exactly what I was thinking as well. One point I want to expand on, which sort of touched upon, right? So when in ISB we sit when the placement season comes around, right? Towards the end of the year, we basically form these groups that help each other with interviews, with resumes, doing mock interviews, mock tests, and all of that. And it's a very effective approach, because essentially what you're doing is trying to go through a proxy of the process, so that when the actual thing happens, you're much better prepared. And I found this really effective, and I see no reason why the beginning of the process should not be the same, right? So as Saurabh pointed out, your peers, your friends, maybe there's a friend of a friend who's an alum from ISB, right? One thing I would encourage everyone who's doing the application is to reach out to these people who can be a support. And if they are ISB alums, nothing like it, right? Especially in your network, reach out, bounce off your resumes, bounce off the essays. Do that, I think, in a more formal setting, and do mock interviews. I think all of those process things, especially in a group, they help really well when we actually do our interviews with companies, and I think they will help in the beginning of the process as well. So just wanted to add that on.
Makes a lot of sense.
Sorry,
Yeah.
yes. Not to sound very, very strategy guy, but quick tip when you're building up your essays and looking at your profile, apart from your resume and your achievements and all, when you're doing introspection, there's something called Johari Window. I'm sure a lot of you would have seen, but those who haven't seen, use it. Or use any such framework. When you will see Johari Window, you will realize what I'm saying. But that will give you a much more structured approach to understand your strengths and weaknesses. You can do SWOT analysis, you do whatever you want to do, but put some framework, make your thoughts more structured. Because if your thoughts are structured, what you'll write in the essay will also be structured. So the person reading your essay will be evaluating you basis what you have written. And hence, I think me and Ravi both are stressing a lot in taking it to the people the circle, or the people, if you know an alum, then please reach out and have him also read, but do take it to the people who know you well, personally and professionally. Don't sit next to them. Just send it across and tell them to read it and come back. And is it conveying the written text? Is it conveying the message that you want to convey in your essay and the application form?
I think you also answered another question, which was, I think, regarding essays and how people should tackle those questions and make a strong application. I think we've sort of touched upon it as well now in good depth. I think a couple of things I can mention here. One, from the admissions team, I'm aware that the next round 2 is somewhere on 5th December is the deadline. And similarly for round 3 will be somewhere in January, but isn't been made explicit yet. So that also deals with sort of mentioning that people should know when those deadlines are and work towards them. Other than that, I think the other aspect that also stood out, I mean, I have very lovely insight regarding the Johari window, because I think that sort of allows people to reflect and also deal with those essays in a more constructive manner. And the last thing, I think a lot of questions in the chat, so I thought I could ask you guys in terms of whether both of you would be volunteering for interviews this year as well. So that's something that too many people are actually curious about. So I'm assuming you've been very active in that space for ISB as well. So any whatever you are you involved this year? Is that something that you want to talk about?
So, let me put it this way. Always there for the ISB family, whichever way I can contribute back to the college. And this is part of the process, whether I'll be there for the interview panel or not. Honestly, it doesn't make much difference in general. And hence will not be very direct on this answer. But as I said, I'm always there in whichever way I can contribute back. While Ravi answers this question, post that, Shweta, I also request you to share your experience. You just wrote your essay, 2 years back?
Had 2 years back, but still, yes, more recent.
More recent than what me and Ravi did to eventually win the admission to ISB. I think your experience will also benefit the people listening to us right now. So maybe once, Ravi, your answer to the admission committee, would love to hear Shweta's USA.
I'm actually curious why this is such a requested sort of question. But anyways, so interestingly, my wife is also an ISB alum, right, from my batch. So I think we volunteered last year and a couple of years ago. This year, no active plans really. But again, it's us or our other alums, ultimately it's the alum community that comes together. And again, at some point in the future, I think maybe we can speak about the sense of community in ISB, which I really think is very unique. But short answer, this year, no real active plans. But if, the volunteering, if they are trying to look for people, yeah, absolutely. We've done it before and yeah, would love to do it again.
Got it. Even I was interested to know why people were that curious. Maybe they want to know if people like-minded or people such as yourself would be the ones they would be looking at during an interview. As sort of mentioned, for me, I also had a very similar approach to essays for ISB. I went with an agenda of having spent a lot of time looking at a plain sheet of paper and just putting down my thoughts in terms of what I felt my where I was today and where I wanted to be in a certain point in time. Not to sound too cliched, but it was just to see that where I would be able to harness a lot of things I had learned or accumulated as skills over time, and whether they would be something that would come in handy in the future when I look to enter bigger corporates and enter the landscape of business. So for me, that was one approach I took. At the same time, I think for me, the essay experience was also almost became a little of a journey to like understand myself even better. So I decided to take a path of being a bit more vulnerable and open about my past experiences and how they've shaped me as a person. That may not be an approach different people take. Everybody has their own approach to essays, but that allowed me to, the fact that I took that sort of a step to be vulnerable in an essay and speak about what shapes my intent to be in an MBA program and why I wish to enter the corporate space. I think those things became very open for me, very clear, and that also allowed me to be a bit expressive in the sense of however utilizing that limited set of words in a very effective way. So that's how I would put it. I think I've just recognized over time speaking to people that everybody has a very different experience with essays. So it's not so easy to typecast it in one way or the other. And that's very evident from you folks as well. I'll move on to the next set of questions. I think you've covered a couple which I had in mind. So,
if I may request, and Ravi and you are okay, I think there's certain questions in the chat. And given this is coming from the live audience, if you both are okay, we should pick some of those and try and...
Sure. I was trying to see if I can dabble between both. I think we can look at a couple of live questions coming in. Okay, so let me just pick up one question. I think few of them are a little specific to certain industries, if you're comfortable answering those. But let's talk about some admissions one as well. Just wanted to some folks asking about GMAT scores and how you approached GMAT or GRE, whichever of the two examinations you took, and anything to keep in mind in that front. That would also be a great question to address.
I think, Shota, that is one we picked up during the course of the discussion, right? It's an all-round profile that you are looking at. Now, GMAT score for someone with 8 years of experience or 10 years of experience will be very different than someone with 4 years of experience, for example. The way you look and evaluate, and also it's a function of the skills and the past exposure and the experience you bring on the table. Having a good GMAT score is definitely a plus, let me put it that way, and not just for ISB. It is applicable globally for most of the management admissions that you would be looking at and evaluating. Well, you need something to sort of put an apple-to-apple comparison, right? The rest of the things obviously is more subjective when you're looking at and evaluating a profile. You need at least some percentage to understand if I have 1,000 candidates of similar set of profile, while obviously there is a very, very high weightage and percentage in terms of what they bring on the table, what the essays tell about them. GMAT becomes an important criteria of looking at the profile as well. Ravi, your thoughts?
No, bang on. I think, see, ultimately it's a test, right? So the score matters. And I don't think there's any two ways about the fact that the score matters and a better score is good. That's because that's just the format, right? But again, the point here is it is none of these by themselves are binary decisions that make or break your case, right? Admission into ISB. GMAT is not the sole factor. Essays are not the sole factor. A spike on your resume is not the sole factor, right? So again, in the interest of a well-rounded profile, there are things that you can do along one front, which manage. Nobody has a perfect profile. Yeah. And I think that's something that I'm very comfortable saying to all of you. Nobody will have the perfect profile for ISB, right? There are different people who push along different boundaries. And that's the way I'd encourage you to think about it. GMAT is one input among many that sort of place your candidature among the others, right? And different people will push along different dimensions. You should figure out what are your controllables. For example, push more on essays, your resume is what it is. So you should figure that out and optimize for it. But I mean, there's no question that GMAT is a test, and ultimately a better score is better.
Yes, makes perfect sense. I'm also going to pick another question from the chat, and I think that also answers something we had in our list to an extent. So one was regarding in your time, and since you are firms that also are recruiters on campus, in firms that are recruiters on campus, just want to get a sense on what kind of strategy roles are offered during ISB placements, and how do those roles evolve over a certain period of time. That's one question, and I think that's very pertinent for everybody who is here in this discussion today as well. So any of you who want to take that up?
I can go first maybe on this. Yeah.
Sure.
So let me speak from a couple of different perspectives, right? So first I'll speak from a consulting Deloitte perspective. So I've come to campus numerous times after, right? To hire for the strategy and operations team for Deloitte, right? And again, here, when we get resumes, there are like close to 500 applications, I think the 3-4 years I was there. What we are looking for is, again, a candidate who shows a rich experience before and during ISB, right? Along with the usual indicators of, sure, CADS is a factor, co-curriculars is a factor. There are many a times when we've looked at, just the co-curriculars, which could be articles published, it could be, working with volunteering, it could be, even a sport event, which indicates a more well-rounded candidate, and those candidates have made it. Through the process itself, again, the key skills that I think most of these companies would check for is the ability to take an ambiguous problem, which is all real world problems, right? They are ambiguous by nature. Take an ambiguous problem, make it a firm problem statement, break it down into its components, and then begin answering each of those components that in sum total help you achieve the objective you want, right? That is what we test for. And we test for that. I mean, there, of course, all companies do it different ways. The way that at least I have been in the interviews I have been part of, it was around first giving a very high level problem, like, hey, it was a guesstimate or, a very broad strategy problem, and then do a more case-based assessment, right? And this is typical for most consulting firms, where you have company A whose sales have grown, but their bottom line has not grown. Why is that, right? Can you help us understand that? And again, when these questions are being asked, the focus is less on specifics, right? Because the specifics are unique to that particular framework. I don't think folks test so much for specifics, but they test for behaviors. And the behaviors is this ability to break the problem down and make sense of it, which I was referring to earlier. So I think that's the broad framework, and that is the way I think your real world work, which you'll do in strategy, sort of translates to that interview and that interaction process.
Anything you want to add here, Saurabh?
I think couldn't have put it better. Ravi has perfectly captured the whole process. So honestly, nothing more to add.
Great. So let me move to, again, on the lighter note, whenever stuff related to ISB questions come up, I find that more interesting as well, because it gets to hear about your experiences, which I want to know, have they changed over time for us or have they not? So one question is related to, has the PGP experience helped you pivot your line of work entirely? how did you prioritize the various opportunities to gain maximum benefit from the 1 year at ISB? So would be while you mentioned your overall experience of how you dealt with the year, that was anything you felt you did specific to maximize what you could get from campus, or would be great to hear.
Saurabh, would you like to go first?
Yep. Shada, if you can come, I think there were two parts to the question. What was the first one? If you
The
can
first
come.
part was regarding, has it helped you pivot your line of work at all, or entirely for that matter?
Oh, wow. Yes, definitely. Believe me, I'm a poster boy for that. From pivoting your career and moving to a different stream. So before ISB, I had a very operational experience, if I can put it that way. So I started my career with Hyundai Motors in sales and marketing, moved to Reliance Retail post that. And from there, I had a small stint in a startup and came to ISB for my MBA. So it was very operational profile when I joined ISB. Post ISB, I had my exposure into very different domains themselves and a very different than what I was doing prior to ISB. I spent almost 5 years in the equity markets as a lead analyst, working with the investors, fund managers, very, very different than the life was very different than what it was before ISB in a way from the work and the professional standpoint. From there, transitioning into strategy for last 7 years, and for a conglomerate like Mahindra, 3 years. ISB was very, very instrumental for me, at least, in sort of exploring and experimenting. See, again, how you want to put up pivoting the career. Are you saying, if I have this degree, suddenly there are 10 different industry guys with profiles standing outside and ready to pick me up? That's not going to happen. It's about how, and I think that was the second part of your question, Shrotas, how you leverage that year to understand a business or the way of looking at the business, or even your attitude of how you work in a group, how you work in a team, how you interact in debates and discussions. And that is what ISB brings on the table. It's just makes it notches better, the way you're communicating, the way you are without arguing, very professionally discussing on problems to reach a solution. And you will understand what I'm saying when you will sit in a group to work on a particular assignment, because everyone has a different thought, everyone has a different idea, and before you submit that assignment, everyone is coming together, bringing their best on the table, so that your project end of the day becomes the best, and you get the required marks to clear that particular subject. So what changes significantly was, one, your capability in terms of your attitude, behavior, and working in a team. But more importantly, it just gives you an ability to take risk and experiment, because you have. So I'll tell you, when this opportunity to work in equity markets came for me, it was a field I never worked in, very, very interested in exploring what it is. And obviously you are sort of confused whether you should leave your comfort zone, which is the industry you know so well. There are people in the industry who know you so well, so on and so forth. And I think I was talking to one of the alums while making that decision, and he put it in a very blunt manner. He said, "Sir, you have 6 years of experience in this particular industry. You have an ISB degree next to you. Worst case scenario, you fail, you come out and you pick up another job. How does it matter?" And that's it. And I never looked back, because I changed my profile then worked on something. It opened 10 different doors for me in terms of opportunities, picked up something different. It just helps you take that risk and experiment and grow in your career. I think that is what a professional degree like ISB help you achieve.
Yeah. I mean, poster boy indeed. Like you rightly said, I don't think anybody could have answered that better, unless Ravi decides to top that up with something even more.
No, I think that's right. See, I mean, to everyone who's here, right? Ultimately, there are two of us who are on the call. And again, we were brought together as panelists because of our job profile, but both of us have made this shift, right? We were both doing something before. ISB gave us the bridge, the tools, the platform to make the change, right? So if the question is, hey, can I make the change? The answer is yes. The opportunity exists, right? And through the process, I think being taught, the courses that we are, the professors that teach us, I think that itself will give you the ability and the knowledge to sort of make that switch, right? And one thing I also want to stress here, which we've spoken about a couple of times, but I think it's so important, is learning from your peers, right? All the opportunities that you see, all the plans that you have before ISB, I think again they're great directional views, but I think ISB is a whole world unto itself. You'll see so many people who've done so many different things, and as Saurabh pointed out, right, people make switches post ISB, post ISB. Those opportunities exist because through ISB also you get the tools to be able to make that change further down the line, right? So yeah, I think ISB is a fantastic place to make that transition.
Right. I think also statistically, if I'm not wrong, the data I have in front of me says that the 78% of the cohort has a functional shift, 79% has an industry shift, and 65% have both a function and an industry shift post ISB. So that completely resonates with what you both were talking about as well. Okay, so there are a couple of questions that I would want to hear. I personally would also want to hear from you. And this is specific to strategy. I think in strategy, there's one question regarding what would you want to learn first, strategy or execution? And there are some very specific questions also related to strategy in terms of how do we strategize the right price tag for the best content or product out there. I think that's a very technical question that would have a long answer, but at least the first half regarding strategy and execution, I think that's something we all struggle with, especially in early halves of our careers. So would want to hear what you think is more important first up. Yes, Ravi, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, sure. See, neither can exist without the other, really, right? It is both strategy and execution have to coexist. And there's typically always that thinking around strategy is always a little up in the air by definition, right? Because you're talking about things at a more high level, right? By virtue of knowing how it is actually going to execute on the ground, you're actually going to be able to make a more realistic, robust strategy, right? So one can't really exist without the other. So if you were to ask me what should come first, my answer would actually be both, right? Because a strategy that doesn't translate on the ground is not really relevant, and execution without a strategy will get you nowhere, right? It's that way in my mind. So you need to have a flavor of both. And I think the ability to learn, and again, see, when you sit down for a company, right, or sit down to make this career transition, it's not that you are a fully baked product, right? You have the right tools and the capabilities to be able to learn what it is to do things really, right? So it is not that you have to know everything about strategy, every framework, or everything, how it translates to the ground. What you need is the ability to grasp both and the ability to move forward on both. That's really what I think it is about. But yeah, in short, I think neither one can exist without the other. So my answer would actually be both.
Saurabh, anything you want to add here?
I think very well put up by Ravi. They have to coexist. In fact, let me sort of complete the picture and bring the third element, which is project management. See, what happens is you have strategy, which is looking at it from a problem statement perspective, if I can put it that way. So, you build, as you mentioned, scenarios, hypotheses, you put it out. There's an execution team, which has to, and it could be what we call CFT, a cross-functional team, which is working in making sure that the defined strategy, and strategy is nothing but choices you are building up, right? Based upon the assumptions that you have, based upon all the data points that you have captured. It can be right, it can be wrong. End of the day, it's not like all your strategies are the best and give you the best kind of success, but this is the best decision you can make with the best available data points and the variables that you have. When you have set it up, your CFP is working. What every strategy guy should definitely know is the project management. Because as Ravi put it, without execution, strategy doesn't matter, right? And without strategy, it's like you are on a street without a map and trying to execute something. So you need a very clearly defined, but how it should be implemented. That step-by-step process is what you call project management. What should be the timelines? Who owns a particular piece of that strategy execution, where the accountability lies, where the responsibility lies? What are the KPIs? What are the metrics? And I think there was this question in chat window early on, which was, how do you look at KPIs of a strategy team? KPIs of a strategy team are aligned with KPIs of a business. They have no difference. So if I'm working on a market share project, it's about how many percentage point market share gain happened after deploying that strategy. So all of that, or the bridge between building a strategy and execution, is where the project management comes in. And with these three, you sort of complete the picture, close the loop, and look at deploying the project.
Perfect. So clearly the answer is both. We should be not learning one or the other. It should be everything works hand in hand.
You don't learn it in the college. So it's an interesting question to come in. And I think Ravi started by saying, see, this is something you will figure out when you will be in the job, you'll be part of the teams. These are very, very set processes. Yes, you have to keep an eye on the execution. You can have, for example, I can have very, very intricate and detailed customer journey plan for a B2C business in the group. But if I haven't looked at it from an execution lens, that the guy at the customer touch point interacting with the customer is able to deliver it, it doesn't pass that test, then it just falls on its head. And this is something which comes with the job. It's not something, honestly, that a college will teach you on how to go about it. This is something when you're out over there, the customer will teach you. That's the best learning you will get, which is the customer, be it B2C or B2B customer. But again, I think it's a very tangential and different topic for the discussion.
I think what we can take away from an ISB standpoint is that ISB is going to open avenues for you to be in situations like this very well, where this will be a thing you're dealing with at a regular basis. So one more question I want to ask related to ISB, and then we'll move towards admission since we'll be nearing the end of the session. So in related to ISB, one question I want to ask you is regarding what common hurdles you faced as students at ISB, and what you wish you would have done before or after, or even during the course, to better excel at what you are doing today. So that would require some introspection maybe, but the question is just about any things you would have done differently, or any hurdles you faced during your year. Sorry, why don't you go ahead?
Honestly, I don't know, that actually requires introspection in terms of what I would have done differently. Honestly, nothing. What I would have definitely tried is maybe sleeping lesser than what I slept, and spending more time enjoying that 1 year, gaining more experiences. But then again, the bag is full of those experiences. See, it's not about what all you will do over there. Believe me, once you reach over there, your life is busy. There are so many things happening. What you'll be doing is making decisions and setting up your priorities. But at one point, there will be, you will have a corporate honcho sitting in the auditorium and giving a talk. At the same time, there would be some discussion happening with maybe a consulting alum at some place. So there is something else happening at some place, or you have maybe your rock band performing at some other place. So you will always have 3, 4, 5 activities happening parallelly, and you will have to set your priorities, take a decision. Only one suggestion will be more uh, diverse in terms of experiences when you are at ISB. And I think, Shotaj, this is one input for you and the batch as well.
I was
Just don't be restricted. I'm a consulting guy, and I want to be just in ACADS and focus on that and miss on certain things. Just live this 1 year to the fullest. I'll share a small anecdote, and this is what me and my roomie used to do, just to make sure that we are not sleeping those extra hours, and for the best time and the asset management, which now I can put it as the technical jargons and the words. 2 o'clock in the night, we used to go and put our laundry in the machine. I am not sure if that still exists or not, but 11 years back, each student village used to have this small room with a lot of automatic washing machines up over there. And throughout the day, there used to be a lot of people going and putting it up. We used to do that late in the night. And it used to take 1.5 hours to run the whole errand and wash the clothes. And then, once you have put it, you can't sleep, right? You have to go and pick it up as well. So that sort of just forces you to use that time to do something more productive and relevant. So crazy. And this is just one. There were like crazy things and experiences we had. So honestly, if I have to look back, I wouldn't change anything. It was such a beautiful experience. Ravi?
Yeah, I agree with you. I wouldn't change anything. I think, again, ISB is a fantastic experience, right? The one thing I wish I had done more of, and I think you sort of touched upon this answer, right, is be more curious and be less rigid about the choices that I had going in. And I've referenced this a couple of times already, right? Be less rigid and explore more opportunities in the world that is out there, right? I wish that is one thing that I would change. I would go back, talk to more people. What are more opportunities? What are some interesting things people were doing in my batch? Just to give you an example, again, an anecdote, right? When we were getting placed, we all had these traditional definitions of success, right? Day 0 placement, day 1 placement, consulting mein ho gaya, McKinsey mein ho gaya. Sure, all of those things happened, right? And I got placed in day 0. So from a traditional definition of success standpoint, it was great for me. But there were these few people who decided, no, they want to explore other opportunities. And they, I don't know if it still happens. They sat on this startup week, where very small startups or new startups were actually coming and hiring people. So many of the startups actually hired employee number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at that point of time. One of the companies that came at that point was Uber. Uber hired its first 3 employees in the country from our batch, right? The opportunity was so huge. And over the next 5-6 years, some of those guys have done fantastically well. The same thing is true for people who chose to start up, right? They didn't have a plan. They started up, and some of the companies from the batch, my batch, and I'm sure the example from Saurabh's batch as well, right? Are multi-billion-dollar startups in the country right now. So I think the one thing I would change is go back, be more curious, engage with more people, and be less rigid about the choices that I thought I had to make going into ISB, right? And learn from the experience itself about what comes next. Yeah.
That sounds comprehensive. I would, in the interest of time, ask you one question that's also coming in chat, and also something that I had in my list, which was regarding, since you were interested in taking up the MBA experience as a part of your career trajectory. What was it that stood out for you for ISB in terms of why you chose ISB over other Indian or foreign B schools? That would be great to hear. Ravi, why don't you take that up first?
Sure. I'll talk about it from the present context. My circumstance was slightly different because of where I was applying. I think India is a fantastic place to be, right? If you think about the global economy, the global scenario, where demand is, where exciting things are happening, I think from a 15-20 year standpoint, I personally think there are few places in the world that have a market that is as big and as fast growing as India, right? Which means the opportunities here are tremendous. And all the startups that you see, right, which whatever unicorns, I think they are in early growth stages. There is so much more to come in this country over the next 10 to 20 years. So that alone sort of, in my mind, drives a decision to make a choice for an Indian university, right? From an ISB versus, again, assuming that most of us were aspiring for the best colleges. So the tier one, I'll talk about the IM versus ISB evaluation, right? In my mind, there were two criteria. One was the fact that ISB was a 1-year course. That was important to me because, again, it is 1 year spent in a very intense environment. And the fact that, most of the people who came here had previous work experiences. Those were a couple of factors that was important to me. The second factor was IM is gated through CAT, right? Again, just in terms of how the parameters, and we spoke a bunch about the parameters that make your application and your candidature a particular way, right? That the weightage on CAT and one particular aspect is a lot higher. Here, again, it's about a more well-rounded profile. This suited me better personally and my situation at that time better, which is why I made the choice for ISB. And with everything that I know right now, it's been, 8 years. I haven't regretted that choice for a minute.
Understood. Anything you want to add here, Saurabh?
I think the decision perspective, Ravi has put it very well. Let me try and leave something for the aspirants on how to look at it. And it's not about how you select ISB, it's about how you select a college, and just lay it down, lay your profile on one side, say, hey, what is your experience, number of years of experience, what is your GMAT, what is your rest of the educational qualification, basic criteria and the filters you put up, lay it down. Put what you want to do with whatever limited understanding and the future vision you have, put it up, what you want to do in next 5 years post your MBA. Then go through a couple of good MBA colleges, which sort of brings these together. So for example, if you have 8 years of experience, 2 years of experience, you're a fresher, you have 15 years of experience, which are the colleges which have a profile of the students that matches it? Are you an outlier or are you part of the batch? Go through how these guys, and today this information is available online. All you have to do is spend a couple of hours to do this research. You can look at trajectory of some of the students in terms of, sorry, am I audible?
Yes.
Right. Just look at how these colleges supported and helped those transitions that you're witnessing. You will have your sweet spot. You will identify the colleges which fit your criteria well, and then fight for it. Then make your best, put your best foot forward, making sure that you get those conversions in place. But rather than saying, okay, this is the only college I want to try, and I only want to go out, I only want to stay in India, I only want to do it from this particular college, do look out more holistically while making your decisions. And once you have made your decision, go for it. I can tell you from my experience, when I joined ISB, I had offers from, including ISB, 3 colleges of the same ranking in a way, if I can put it that way. From my list, there were like 3 colleges which I wanted to join, and I was over there. What tilted the decision completely in ISB's, I'll not say favor because it was me joining them, but one, as I mentioned in the beginning of the discussion, was the whole experience, the whole admission process experience. Unlike being grilled in the interview, this was more a discussion. We were just chatting around so many interesting things about my profile, about in general what is happening. So one was, if the initial process, which is supposed to be grilling, is so good, then the experience, overall experience, has to be better. Secondly, as I mentioned, if you have your framework very well defined, and coming back to the first principles, I knew with 6 years of experience trying to do something in India and stay in India, it was a perfect sweet spot wherein my profile, my aspirations, everything sort of comes together and lands so well.
Got it. So, since we have a few minutes left before we move to closing remarks, I think I can ask a couple of questions around around admissions. So, one, since you mentioned this entire aspect of how you came across and how you chose chose ISB as your place to be, the question is that, is there an ideal work experience according to you to do the PGP program? If someone has a lot of experience, say over 10 years, should they still consider ISB, or should they consider different programs within ISB like the PGP Pro, which is focused on people with higher experience? Any views you have on that front, Saurabh?
Sorry, Shraddha, I didn't get the question.
The question is around, do you think, is there an ideal experience for the PGP? I think we both know the answer to that. But other than that, is there, if someone has over 10 years of experience, should they consider different programs offered by ISB, or should they consider PGP itself?
There is no specific experience. Obviously, there's a minimum criteria. And I think this goes back to my last answer. This layout and all this is available in the brochure. You can actually see last couple of batches profile in terms of what kind of experience they bring on the table. There will be people with 14 years of experience. There will be people with 2 years, 3 years of experiences. There will be people from consulting, from commerce, from arts, from armed services. I remember my batch had, I think, 15 or 20 people with armed services background, and they bring in so much of interesting perspective in the discussion. I remember in my batch, there was a colleague from one of my companies prior to ISB, and she was at least 5 years elder to me in terms of the experience that she brings in. So that also tells you it's not about the level or the hierarchy. So the whole, okay, there is no set framework that you need only 3, 4, 5 years of experience to get in. And again, this is in public information. You can look at and you should look at brochures, not just ISB. Any college that you are looking at, please go through their brochures. There's tons of information available on the batch profile. It will also help you position yourself. If you know what is the student profile of the last batch and last batch, you know how to position yourselves in the essays and discussions. Now, whether you should do PGP, Max, I don't think I'm the qualified guy to guide you onto that. That's a decision you have to make. Ravi?
No, absolutely nothing to add. I think there is no standard that ISB or the process defines, and the decision to make about which is the right course, I think that's an individual decision determined by individual circumstances. And like Saurabh said, I think that's something that maybe the admissions team is better qualified to comment on as well, right? But ultimately, I think that's something that each of the individuals have to decide on their own as well.
Right. Here I can add that ISB even today continues to have that sort of range of experience. So the current batch has the range is from 2 years to 24 years. So that speaks for itself. And of course, again, as Saurabh mentioned, people coming from the armed forces, people coming from the Navy, and people coming from folks who have worked in government services, people who've cleared civil exams and have worked in the IS and the IRS have also showed up. So it is an amazing experience. I mean, even to be on the other side and having to interact with such people is always something that you unless it's a setting like this, it's not something that happens naturally. So yeah, I would say again, the range and there is no ideal work experience as mentioned. One question.
Shota, if I can just give you one anecdote, by the way, since you mentioned the current year. So when I joined ITC all those years back, right, there were about 6 of us who made it through and joined as a batch. 2 of us graduated in 2013. One person graduated in and this is all ISB incidentally. That batch seemed to have an affinity for ISB as well. One chap graduated in 2014, one person in 2015, and one person is in ISB right now. So he's actually Shota, your batchmate, and perhaps I can give you the name later, right? But all of us were the same batch when we began. Just goes to show you that people make different choices at different points of time and get to ISB at different stages, right? But there's no one framework or one optimal work experience that, gets you there. It's a combination.
That I think that exemplifies it very, very well. And I mean, I'm also seeing it from my own college, and I've seen my own batchmates who have joined a couple of years ago who are going to be joining next year, and so on and so forth. So it is an individual decision, and of course, everybody takes away different things when they come in at different points as well. One question, I think this is a little specific, but still wanted to get your inputs on it before we close. Is that any activities which you think people should take up pre-joining ISB? Could it be social work, like sort of mentioned, or it could be extracurriculars, or anything that you think adds value to people's profiles or up their road to come to ISB? Anything you have to add there would be great. And since you've been on panels before and interviewed people, you may be able to comment on that front as well.
So, do something you like. Okay. Don't just build your resume. I can tell you, being on the panels, we have never looked at candidate and said, we NGO wala chahiye. It doesn't work that way. What you look at, and I have said it in the past as well, you look at the all-round personality. There are no tick boxes. Someone with social sector experience, or someone with a startup experience, or someone who is an IT engineer with overseas experience. It doesn't work that way. You see, when you will interact, you realize how genuine that person is, and that is what you are trying to do, right? When you are talking to, and that's why I said it's a discussion. It's not grilling. The admission interviews. You're just trying to see what the guy has done, and whatever field, how well he has done that, right? You may have been good at sports, so put that out. You may have been very passionate about some social activity, do that well. But whatever you do, just make sure you put in those extra efforts in, and that's why I said you have to be genuine. It has to be an area of interest for you. Put in more efforts rather than having just it as a hobby on the sidelines. Put more efforts, but be genuine. Just don't do anything because it's a tick box. Doesn't work that way. I can very clearly tell you that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think follow your interests to their natural points, right? That is really what should make its way to the resume. And I think that's the right way to do it also, right? We spoke a lot about having a future area of interest and sort of doing the work that helps you build to that point. I think your overall resume should also follow that story, right? So you should follow interests, follow causes or activities that you genuinely are interested in and passionate about. I think that will help you from a growth standpoint, that will help you from an interview discussion, a deep dive discussion, whatever that is. I think it'll help on multiple aspects. So follow your interests and let that guide your resume instead of the other way around.
That's perfectly put. I think we are heading towards the end of our Q&A. So I would open it to you guys for closing remarks on anything you want to add to whatever we've said so far, and we can close this session. Anything you want to add now after our discussion, anything you feel that's pertinent for students?
So all I'll say is, think, and I'm assuming the audience we have is the aspiring candidates and the applicants. So one, plan very, very clearly in terms of timelines, how you want to build your profile, by when you want to build your profile. Go through a couple of iterations. Don't leave it for the end. And I'm assuming you have made up your mind and you have a list of colleges ready. Be completely thorough about it. Talk to a few people, introspect, build it up, put your best foot forward, and just leave it over there. Don't think too much. in terms of what will happen, how things will happen, how the life at ISB will be, what it will be posed at in terms of careers. From my experience, I can tell you life at ISB is something to look forward to and is very, very amazing. And so is life afterwards, once you're out of it. But your life anyways is amazing even otherwise. So yes, this adds a lot of value, but it's not end of the road. There are opportunities, there are dreams and visions that you should have. From pure admission perspective, plan it well, because last moment it will become completely crazy. So plan it well and put your best foot forward. Wishing you all great luck in applying, and hope to see you in one of the reunion parties that we have every year. And maybe this year, if it is on the campus, would love to meet you as well, Shotaj.
Yes, there are some offline events happening this year, so hopefully.
So I can add on, and as Saurav was thinking, I had time to frame this, right? I think there are two thoughts that I want to leave the group here with. One, at the beginning of the process, there is no one standard, right? As we've emphasized multiple times, the admission, the process is a combination of many different factors, right? So take that entire thing into account. And please know that there is no one work experience, one years of work experience, one particular line item in your resume that's a binary decision, right? It's a sum total of factors. And that, along with the plan that I think Saurabh spoke about, is really what most of you should be thinking about as you think about the admissions, right? The second point that I want to leave you with is about the transition, right? From your current career to strategy or product or tech. ISB enables you to do that. But these decisions, you can afford to leave these decisions less firm than you now think about it as. It is not that on day one, when you enter ISB, you need to know what career and what options you're going to exit with, right? You can afford to be a lot less rigid about it. And I personally feel that's for the better, right? So having a directional view is good, but having the ability to explore is a large part of what ISB is about. So I'd encourage all of you to think about it in those terms as well, that it's not about what is your one exit option, but the fact that this is going to give you many, many opportunities, and the ability to explore is what you're really getting in this experience. Yeah, those are the couple thoughts. That's it.
That's great. So I think I don't have anything more to add per se. I'm just currently experiencing what Ravi and Saurabh are talking about in past tense. I'm supposed to be living it, and I am to quite an extent. This is as once whoever eventual aspirants who apply and come here will recognize that the whatever you perceive the PGP program and everything to be, every perception you have will eventually still not be the same as to when you enter this place. And once you do, there are a plethora of things to do and learn from. And at some points you don't even know that you're really learning something while it's, subconsciously like entering you in ways where in certain experiences that you're taking part in. And of course, with that, I want to close today's session. I think Jimmy tells me that there's a faculty masterclass session tomorrow for folks who are interested at 11:30 a.m. and people can go to the website and register to get a classroom experience. And we can tell you that classroom experiences come back on campus. So we are attending lectures in person, and we had a couple of months of the online setup, and now that we are in an offline module, it is something that everybody who's going to be coming next year is going to be really, really keen to be sitting in those rooms. We've sat clearly, Ravi, we've sat in the same rooms. At least I know and understand that those experiences are different than anything we've done in undergraduate as well. So with that, I'm going to close this. Thank you everybody for attending the session, and yes, thank you, JB, for making this happen.
Thanks, JB, and thanks, Ravi. It was a pleasure to be here and have your thoughts.
Yes, thank you so much. Thanks, Shotaj, for moderating this. Thank you, Jibi, for coordinating. And best of luck to all the people who joined in as well. Wish you all the very best.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks.
everyone.